Happy Tuesday! Alright, we're having a bit of thought-provoking fun here, and this is part 2 of this video series. If you haven't watched part 1, guess what? None of this is going to make sense. If you have and you're watching this, then congratulations. You are curious. You have a curious mindset. Now that is an amazing strength and skill to have, one that requires constant practice, but you will be rewarded. Alright, so in part 1 we're talking about interviewing here, setting your interview up for success. We're talking about some strategy work. A little sub-element of that is if you had the choice of when you interview, would you choose morning or afternoon? And that was the question in part 1. If you did have the choice, some people thought about it and said, you know what, I operate best in the mornings. Some people thought about it and said, you know what, I operate best in the afternoons. I choose to have the interview then. Remember, keep in mind here about the outcome. Most people interview because it's an outcome. They are looking forward to going to the next round, or they're looking for the job offer, the job. Okay, so let's keep the outcome in mind. In interviewing though, your thoughts and your wishes, you're only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is that person who's sitting across the table from you, interviewing you, the interviewer, or what I call the decision maker. It is worth considering when you're strategically setting your interview up for success, their preferences. So let's take an assumption here, and this is not an unrealistic assumption, especially in town here. A lot of the jobs are offline, you go through a recruiter, people know people. Let's take the assumption, the curious thought-provoking assumption, that you know the hiring manager and you know that they're either a morning person or an afternoon person. That's the question here today. So let me explain what that means. If in part 1 you said, you know what, if I had the choice of when I interview, I would interview in the morning because that's when I operate best, that's when I'll be my best version. If you find out the hiring manager is actually an afternoon person, would you change the time of the interview if you had the choice? And vice versa. If in part 1 you said, you know what, I'm an afternoon person, that's when I'm up and firing, I would have the interview in the afternoon, and you found out the hiring manager, the decision maker, is actually a morning person, would you swap the times of the interview and actually have a morning interview? That's my question. That's it's going to take some curiosity, it's going to take some thought. Have a think, would you change the time of the interview? Clearly if you had the option, keeping in mind the outcome that you're after. If you're up for it, engage below, put your comments and thoughts. Love to hear if you'd actually change the time or not change the time, and your reasons why. Be awesome. And in the meantime, have a think, put them down, and stay tuned for part 3.